Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 16 of the Integrity Racing Show. I'm the sober one, Todd Thomas, here with you tonight, and I'm joined by our league owner and administrator, the not sober one, Jacob. Jacob, say hello to everybody.
Yeah, I hope everybody's doing well tonight. Have a good one.
All right. Well, we were supposed to be joined by Guillermo Alvarez, who won 2 weeks ago at Pocono. Unfortunately, Guillermo's having some technical difficulties tonight. He's still working on it. I think you can see down at the bottom. Guillermo's trying to work out the technical kinks. He can hear us, but we can't hear him. So hopefully Guillermo will get that working, and he'll just jump right in wherever he does. If not, it'll just be the two of us, and only one of us kind of knows what's going on tonight. So as we talked about, Jacob's a little inebriated tonight. But let's start where we always start, recapping the last week's race. And last week we were at Watkins Glen. Andrew Fayez storms to the field from a pretty deep in the pack, if I recall, starting position. 26th back in the pack. Storms all the way up to the front of the field and gets his 4th win of the season. That's 3 more than any current driver in the league. That's going to give him a 9-point pedestal as we go into the chase, barring him winning another race. So a good race for Andrew. Wins it by 3 seconds coming up to the field. Of course, no cautions as it was a road course race. Good finish for Carlos Fonseca, getting that silver medal in 2nd. William Dunn finishes 3rd, Tyler Herr in 4th, and Brad Wren in 5th. Probably the story of the show was maybe not the winner, but an event that led up to who actually did win the race. We had 3 competitors going into turn 1, none of which survived. And our league administrator and Jacob Fife was up there in that battle. And Jacob, you can talk us through your race a little bit and what kind of happened there in turn 1.
Do we have to? No. It was a good race overall. I was really happy with the way my car handled and how I was able to click off some really good lap times. The issue with 1, it was interesting. I'll put it that way. We're all battling hard for the lead. I believe it was Nick and Brendan Kohler. Were battling pretty hard there for a couple laps, and I'd managed to catch up with them. I had kind of saved my tires a little bit and then decided it was go time. So I caught up to them. I thought I had a run, and at the same time I was trying to get under Nick. Nick was trying to get under Brendan, and then they checked up, and I couldn't see that they were checking up, so I ran over Nick, and then it became a big cluster, if you will. So that kind of ended the majority of our nights. Brendan exited pretty quickly, and then Nick and I tried to keep going. I was actually able to maintain I think I was 5th or 6th. I was behind Tyler Herr, and I was able to keep pace with him until my engine blew, and that kind of led me back to where I finished, I think around 23rd, 24th, something like that. And I had a really good car. I was really happy with the way I was running. I had a real good shot at winning. I thought I was setting myself up pretty well to battle for the win there at the end. And sometimes that's just not the way it works. So congratulations to Andrew. Carlos and him had a really good run in the last 5 laps for the win. And so I'm happy for both of those. I know Carlos is really close to getting in the chase, or really on that cut line, so it was an important race for him. And obviously, Andrew is doing Andrew things, which most of us can't do. So, so obviously, congratulations to him on the win. But like I said, it was one of my chances to win, and just one mistake here or there on the road course can cost you that. So kind of lesson learned, and hopefully, as we go into Kentucky here next week in our future races, I can still solidify that win.
An interesting dynamic there as you go into turn 1. You've got Brendan Kohler, who picked up a win and is locked into the chase as long as he makes the next couple. He's got to make the rest of the races up all the way through Richmond. Jacob, who's in pretty solid position points-wise, and then you've got Nick Ward, who really was in he's got to get a win mode, and I think Nick knew that, so that probably added a little bit of the intensity to Nick's driving there, and I know he's disappointed not to come away with a good finish or even a win at Watkins Glen, because he did put in a lot of work. But all in all, a good race. Gave some opportunities from some other guys. We talked about Brad Wren with a 5th place finish. Started 14th and worked his all the way up to 5th, so a good run for Brad. And he's another guy that needs to continue to solidify good finishes if he wants to make his way into the chase field. So I know that was a good finish for him and a really meaningful one. Jacob talked about Carlos's second place finish, trying to work his way into the chase. Every point matters, so for him to get up a second place finish was a good race for him. Michael Dole finishes sixth. I know Dole complained he was really struggling at the end of the run, so he kind of fell back a little bit from where he was earlier in the race. Adam Blasio finishes seventh, a good run for Adam. Guillermo finishes eighth. I wish we could talk to him about it, but Guillermo's not here. Yours truly finishes ninth, finished after a self-spin there coming out of the carousel, which is just an unbelievably tough turn for yours truly. Had to settle for a ninth place finish when I think it was maybe a fifth or sixth place car. And Lance Gentles actually picks up a top 10. So all in all, a good race. Jacob, you were out there for about 35 to 40 laps of it. What would you think about the racing overall? It was without the cautions, and you have to weave in and out of traffic. How do you think the race went?
I mean, I think it worked really well. I think when you look at the top 10 there, you see a lot of guys who are on the cut line who are really battling to try to get into that top 16, especially the guys who haven't had a win yet. You saw Brad Wren, you saw Michael Dole. Guillermo's on the plus side of it, but I mean he's pretty close to the cut line. Obviously, Carlos with his second place finish on Monday, he's right there at the cut line along with Jay Heishman, so who also I think he was just outside of the top 10. Jay was, so they're all right there on the cut line, and they're all deserving of, if they are able to make it in the top 16, they're deserving of that spot. They have good runs, so. It's going to be a really tight battle. I think if we look at the chase standings a little bit later in the show, you'll see, if I'm not mistaken, there's like a 1 point difference for the cut line right now between a couple drivers. So I think that'll fluctuate obviously a lot in the last 5 races or so, and it'll create for an interesting battle, to really, get us into our chase races here in the last 10 races.
All right, and since Jacob talked about the chase standings, let's go ahead and take a look at those bad boys. A 1 point difference if the chase was to start right now, which it doesn't, but if it did, Carlos would make the chase by 1 point over James Hudson. So getting that second place finish, if memory serves, I believe Carlos was somewhere around 10 points below the cut line as of last week, but a good second place finish for Carlos works himself into a situation where he would be in the chase if it started tonight. James Hudson 1 point back. Michael Dole finished sixth on Monday at Watkins Glen. He's now 4 points out of the chase. Brad Wren with a good finish, I think a fifth place finish for Brad, works his way a little bit closer to that cut line and only 11 points down. So it's really shaping up. As long as everybody in this field meets the minimal chase requirements, which we believe that they're going to do, Jacob, it's really setting itself up to something really spectacular coming up at Richmond.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, you have a lot of guys right there on the cut line, and all that has to happen is one guy outside of the chase cut line has to win, and that changes the whole dynamic of the chase itself. So. It's really fluctuating. Guys, I know James is right on the cut line. He had some technical difficulties, if you will, with his internet this past Monday night that really cost him. So, a bad race, some technical difficulties, and that really can determine whether or not he's going to make the chase this year. So he's pretty worried about it. I know, there's a lot of different teams who are right on that cut line trying to get their driver in, and it's going to be interesting to see how that shapes out, and really is going to increase the intensity for what we see at Richmond in about 5 weeks or so. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm slightly glad I'm not exactly on that cut line, even though I don't have a win, but yeah, it should be an interesting deal.
That's right. 5 races left to get your spot in the chase solidified. So those guys in the cut line area had to be sweating it up pretty good, so good luck to all of those guys. You never know, we might have a Chris Buescher type situation rear its ugly head at a track like Darlington. somebody coming out of nowhere, so to speak. So we got some tracks where maybe some people could get a surprise win. Bristol's coming up. Obviously, all kinds of craziness can happen at Darlington. So the next 5 weeks should be pretty fun, exciting racing coming up on each Monday night. So speaking of Richmond, just to remind everyone, Richmond will be the debut of our live post-race show. So this Integrity Racing show that normally takes place on Thursday evenings at 8 o'clock will have 4 different, or maybe 5, I can't remember exactly, I believe it's 5 different installment of live shows, and those will be each whenever we have a cut line. So our first live episode of the Integrity Racing show will be immediately following the race at Richmond. We're going to break it all down, talk to those drivers around the chase line, and talk to those guys that maybe just creeped in or just missed out on the chase to discuss it with those guys. We're planning on that taking place about 15 minutes after the show. It's just a little something extra to try to throw to you guys and give you guys something to be proud of as members of the Integrity Racing League. Jacob, I know you and I have talked about this. What do you envision that kind of looking like?
Yeah, I think we want to add an extra dynamic into what we bring you for the league as members. We want to kind of cover each story that develops throughout, obviously, the cut line, which would be getting into the chase for Richmond. And then as each round goes on, we want to cover, I think Guillermo just kicked in there, we want to cover each round and give you guys something extra to kind of talk about and be interested in and mix things up for the Integrity Racing show. So I'm really looking forward to it, first of all, and covering the guys who are able to make it to the next round and the guys who fell just short. It's going to be a lot of different storylines coming as each week progresses, and as each round goes on, we want to be able to cover that and give you a different perspective maybe than what you might see from the broadcast that Daryl does each week. It does such a good job with. So I'm looking forward to it. Going to create a little more work for me right after the race, but that's okay. Like I said, I'm excited to interview different people as they may get eliminated from the chase or barely make it on, and see how the races go as we progress through Richmond and then the chase races after it. So should be a lot of fun. Make sure you tune in to what we are going to cover, and like I said, I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, and it sounded like we might have heard from our guest tonight, Guillermo Alvarez, might have that mic finally working. Guillermo, can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, Guillermo, it's a pleasure to have you. Thanks for joining us here tonight. You won a couple of weeks ago at Pocono. Tell us a little bit about that win and what it meant for you to lock yourself into the chase.
Well, it was fun. It was interesting. Also, was a hard race for the three of us duo, Don and myself. It was pretty interesting, hard-driven race, and I really enjoyed beating them all.
I'm sure they enjoyed racing around you. You're always known as one of the cleaner guys in the service. Tell us a little bit about yourself, when and how you got involved in iRacing.
I'm from a city called Querétaro in the central Mexico. It's a decent-sized city, the best city in Mexico, I think. Also, I started a couple years ago, also heard of iRacing about in '08, something like that, and always thought you have to try this. You love racing, it's a thing you have to do. So a few years after spending my time or wasting it on Gran Turismo, I said, let's get rid of the PlayStation and get a real PC and try on iRacing.
All right, and you're one of the, Jacob, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe you might be the only non-American that traditionally races it. Well, excuse me, we have a couple of Canadians. But other than Canadians, Guillermo, I believe you might be the only Mexican or other international driver in the service in the Integrity Racing League. Do you take a lot of pride in that?
A little bit, because, well, as you said, there is not many of us are racing there. I think that from my club, I'm the highest ranked driver, so I think that, to me, that's, well, just about the only one that tries it and does it to the level I do. But yeah, there's a few. I have a friend from Uruguay. We race every now and then, but yeah, I really like the fact that I'm just right there, my name, a Mexican name or a Spanish name, right there on the top of the standings on the NIS.
All right, so you got that win at Pocono. You're locked into the chase now. What do you think your chances are to maybe lock up that Integrity Racing League championship at Homestead?
Let's be honest, very slim. We have very much better drivers. I think I am decent, but I am not as fast. So.
Well, I don't think a lot of us are, to be honest, as me and Jacob kind of sit here and nod our heads. There's not a lot of drivers in the league that are as fast as Andrew, but as we look forward to the chase, what are some of the tracks that we might look at for Guillermo Alvarez to put that car in victory lane?
What was that? I'm lost.
I'm sorry. What tracks in the chase do you think you're really good at? You do actually have a chance to win in the chase. What are some of your better tracks in the service?
Well, we're going back to Kansas in a while, and I'm looking forward to it. Also, a few of the short tracks, but other than that, I'm just let's see who can beat whom.
All right, so let's talk about Watkins Glen a little bit. You got yourself a good win, a good finish there at Watkins Glen. I believe you finished 5th. As I try to pull it back up here, just a second. Got yourself an 8th place finish at Watkins Glen. Talk to us a little bit about your race this past Monday night and how that went.
Well, I thought I was a little bit confident because I like road courses, but this time around I just didn't do it as I expected. I was wheel hopping into every corner, was making mistakes, and in the end it showed. I had to give up spots to simply survive.
All right, so thanks for Guillermo for joining us tonight, and hope to see you out on the track again. You've been a good addition to the league and a good competitor and somebody everybody likes to drive around. So it's good to have you in the league. Let's talk about the Rookie of the Year standings real quick. Update that where we've had a little bit of closing of the gap, so to speak, as I try to zoom in here a little bit so that everybody can see it a little bit cleaner. A little bit of a closing of the gap. That gap between Adam de Blasio and Brad Rain is closed to just 33 points after 21 races. I know Brad's put in a lot of good finishes in the last few days. I know he's probably excited as his finishes have continued to get better and better each week. So we're happy for Brad to close that gap up and see where that goes. Let's also take a look at the Elton Golf and Batting Team standings. Lockdown Racing continues to hold a little more than a 4-point lead over 2 to Green Racing, which actually leapfrogged Integrity Racing in second in points there after Watkins Glen, maybe in part due to the league owner and administrator Jacob 5 getting a 26th place finish. So Jacob, are you guys pretty disappointed to see that you got leapfrogged, and what do you guys have planned to maybe jump over us again?
Yeah, we had a little bit of a rough night there at Watkins Glen. Like I said, I had my issues, obviously, that we talked about earlier. James had some internet issues. Otherwise, he was, I think he was in the top 15 or so. So he was holding his own. Trevor, as always, he's pretty consistent. He finished in the top 20, which that's nothing to sneeze at for a road course. And then William, as always, he was in the top 5. But like I said, I think the guys over at 2 to Green had a good run there, and I think they placed some guys pretty well in comparison. So they were able, to close the gap for sure, and which is good. I think we were kind of, I know we talked about it a little bit after the race with our team, and we were kind of looking ahead to where lockdown was and trying to compare where we were and if we would gain or lose any, which I think we stayed pretty stable, but we forgot to look behind us and see that 2 to Green with Duel, who had a good run. Obviously, you, Todd, had a good run as well. And a couple of the other guys, and when you talk about Jay and Joseph Yates, who's made his way into the top 20 pretty solidly, had solid finishes. So when you make that and you're able to be consistent, then that'll put you in good position to make spots up as far as the team challenge goes. So, definitely a good effort from you guys this past week of Monday night, but I know our guys will come back strong in Kentucky and try to grab the spot back from you. So it'll be a nice little battle as we both try to close in on lockdown for the top spot.
All right, and we haven't really talked about this standing all year, but Adam de Blasio has done a great job of updating people on it the last couple of weeks. This is your Clean Driver Award standings, and just to preface this a little bit, to be eligible for the Clean Driver Award, you must start at least 15 races on the year. So you see a few names over there on the right-hand side that would be in the standings if it wasn't for the fact that they haven't met the minimum standard. Andrew Fash with a pretty sizable lead there. It's pretty easy to stay clean when you're up front for 3/4 of the race, but still it's a testament to his driving ability. But Guillermo Alvarez, you're in 4th place in the clean driver standing, so you've been one of the cleaner drivers in the league so far this year. Haven't caused a caution since the new league rules have been updated. Is that something you try to pride yourself on as a driver?
No, I'll try to wreck everyone in the next few weeks. But I think I like to be kind of clean. I don't want to shove my car into every corner, but yeah, I just don't like being that aggressive.
All right, and Jacob, you're up there as well in Summit, and kind of looking at the rest of the names here on this list, you've got Brad Wren up there in 3rd, so that's a really impressive statistic for Brad as he tries to make his way into the chase. Tyler Herr's got a win this year. Marcus Lambert's got a win in the chase. Jay Heisman and yourself don't currently have wins, but you're running pretty clean. It's a good list of pretty good drivers up there, Jacob.
Yeah, I think the main thing you want to look at with that stat that I picked up on last week when Adam started really keeping track of it, which he does such a good job of doing. If you look to the left, the guys that are on the left there are, as long as they make the rest of the races or only miss 1 or 2, are still eligible. So if you look, or not the left, excuse me, the right. If you look to the right, for example, with Kent Weatherall, I mean, he's done a fantastic job of keeping clean this year, and if he makes the rest of the races, he'll be pretty much a shoe-in for that award. He went through Watkins Glen without any incidents, which is pretty hard to do. Lord knows I did not come close to that. So I think looking at the standings, it's really we have some clean drivers, obviously. We've had some very good weeks the past few weeks that we've talked about on here with some cleaner driving and kind of taking care of the lack of cautions. But like I said, if you look to the right there, those standings, you have some really clean guys who, if they make the majority of the races, will be able to solidify their spot at the top of the standings. So that's something to watch out for as we progress through the rest of the season.
All right, and let's update everybody on the caution counts. Of course, Watkins Glen is a no cautions race, so nobody accumulated a caution. But just as a quick heads up to a few drivers here, James Hudson is on his 2nd caution, as is William Roberts Jr. Brendan Kohler has 2. Michael Ellis has 2. Trevor Perry has 2. Trying to find anybody else that has 2 and is currently on the bubble of another suspension. Brian Terry has 2. Ty McWhorter has 2. And that kind of rounds out the drivers that have 2 cautions currently. And just as a quick reminder to everybody, if you do accumulate that 3rd caution at Richmond, that's going to result in your 1-race suspension taking place at Chicago, which is the first race of the chase. So if you're one of those chase drivers, you really got to be careful for the rest of the way in, especially at Richmond, to make sure you don't cause that 3rd caution. So that should be a little bit interesting. So let's move the show along a little bit. Next week we go to Kentucky, which is kind of a rescheduled race. Jacob, tell us how we ended up racing Kentucky this week.
Yeah, it's basically a reschedule of Kentucky fell on 4th of July weekend, and obviously I'm sure, as most of you remember, that we basically had a majority vote that we wanted to reschedule it. So those of you who have families or friends or stuff that you wanted to spend time with over the holiday weekend, we gave you that opportunity to spend time with them and not have to worry about showing up and making points and all that stuff. So we're going to race Kentucky Monday night. I know I have not had a chance to run Kentucky yet. I know Dad's already started practicing, and he's all excited. That's one of his better tracks, if you will. So he started practicing, but it should be. That's always an interesting race, I think. Kentucky always seems to me like it has about 1.5 grooves to work with. If you balance your car correctly, you can kind of work that bottom lane a little bit for the first few laps, but one lane up seems to be the best lane through 1 and 2, and a little bit through 3 and 4 if you can work the bumps correctly. I know that's always an interesting balance to try to strike as you work your way around the track. So it should be an interesting race, kind of like we talked about. That cut line is going to be really intense for those guys who are on it. So it's, like I said, the intensity is going to pick up the next few weeks for those on the cut line and even those who are trying to get a win to make it in. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic. And I'm looking forward to a fun race at Kentucky, and also looking forward to a clean race as we're trying to keep up with the lack of cautions we've had over the past, I guess, 5 or 6 weeks or so now, which I've been really happy to see. And we want to keep that pace up, even though maybe the intensity is kind of picking up for those who are trying to make the chase.
All right, so let's look at last year's Kentucky event where Jeff Ramsdell brought home the trophy. Andrew Fesh had to settle for second. William Dunn finished third. Bradley Haber got a fourth-place finish. Jacob Fife finished fifth. Tyler Hurst sixth. Trevor Dalton seventh. There's Guillermo down there at eighth. Josh Campbell ninth, and Jason K. Miller. I'm excited for this race because it'll actually be the first time I've actually been able to compete at Kentucky. Track I never ran a single lap at Kentucky. It always falls the week of my anniversary, which is when my wife and I always take our vacation. So never turned a lap there at Kentucky. Pretty excited to take part in that race. Guillermo, you finished eighth in this event last year. Tell us about the bumpy track of Kentucky and what you kind of think of the circuit.
It's a fun place. I really like it. It's, I think, similar to Pocono and Michigan. You can really move a little bit, even though it's a little narrow, as Jacob said. But it's a fun place. I'm looking forward to it too.
All right, so that's going to wrap up our show tonight. We want to thank Guillermo Alvarez, our guest, for joining us, even and fighting through some technical difficulties and joining us halfway through the show. We appreciate his work to join us here tonight. Thanks to Jacob Fife for operating the league and giving us a place to come in here to discuss it. We're going to see you Monday night for our race there at Kentucky. It's going to be 134 laps around that bumpy little track, so get your elbows ready, get up on that wheel. And we'll see you next Thursday night at 8 o'clock for episode 17 of the Integrity Racing Show. Have a good night, everybody.